Boom! Really need to find a way of getting that music to continue playing in the background because it's a bloody good song, that, and I hate cutting off so abruptly. But welcome to VUX World. I am Kane Sims, and I'm here again on Tuesday for another rundown of what is new in the world of conversational AI, NLP technologies, speech technologies, and all that jazz. So, welcome. If you are new here, welcome. I've been doing these every Tuesday. I'm going to carry on doing them. So I'm not with a guest today. I'll tell you about the guests that we have coming up on VUX World very shortly. If you're not already subscribed to VUX World, please do so. VUX.world/subscribe. There you will get all of the invites to all of the live events that we do with conversational AI and NLP industry thought leaders every single week. And you'll also get our articles, our industry analysis, and insights, news, all that kind of stuff to your inbox as well. Uh, Fantastically, what's happened today, I've realized, might have happened yesterday, I don't know, I had a lie in, is that LinkedIn has finally allowed newsletters in the UK. So LinkedIn has had newsletter capabilities in the US for absolutely ages. I've subscribed to a whole bunch of them. Bernard Marr does a very good one all about AI and future developments of AI. And finally, I logged into LinkedIn, and there it was, the ability to create a newsletter. So I have created one. I am on the LinkedIn newsletter bandwagon. It is called Conversational AI and NLP. The link is on screen right now. For those listening on the podcast, I do apologize. It is the most horrific URL you have ever experienced in your whole life. LinkedIn has something about LinkedIn. It just generates completely terrible URLs. And so the URL is linkedin.com/newsletters/conversational AI NLP remember this bit 6863707795267584000. So so there you go. But if you do go to my profile on LinkedIn, which is a lot easier, linkedin.com/in/Kane Sims, then you'll find the link to the newsletter. Basically, what I'm going to do is we've had the VUX World newsletter for quite some time, and every single week we share whatever we've published on VUX World, whatever podcasts we've published, whatever events we've got coming up, and whatever kind of like noteworthy stories we find online and on the internet, etc. And that's what we're going to do with this LinkedIn newsletter. It's going to be very specific. It's going to be hand curated, the best top stories in the conversational AI and NLP space. Anything that will help you make better strategic decisions, we're going to cover in this newsletter. It's going to be every single Tuesday. So please do subscribe. There's over 1,100 people subscribed to it already in the space of not even 6 hours, which is pretty impressive. So thank you very much if you have subscribed. And yeah, we're going to roll on with it. Been lots happening over the last week. Yesterday was a fantastic event put together by the Swiss Cognitive team, Cognitive Virtual, and it was all about how AI is leading to autonomy. And the team at Swiss Virtual, Swiss Cognitive, I must say, are incredibly well organized. The event ran for about 3 hours. I did the closing keynote, and it was just so well put together. It was polished. It was professional. A lot of excellent speakers covering a lot of great topics. There was content. There was, deep dive insights. There was research being presented. There was a whole bunch of really interesting topics being discussed. And so I won't give away too much. I would strongly suggest that you find Swiss Cognitive either on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you decide to spend your time on the proverbial social networks. Definitely search for Swiss Cognitive and definitely check out the event. It was really good. My keynote was probably around about 2 hours and 45 minutes. That wasn't the length of it, although the material that was in there could have probably gone for that long. But 2 hours 45 minutes is where my keynote is. And essentially, I'm talking about one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to AI and how you can overcome that in a matter of 5 days. The upshot, essentially, and I'll clip up the whole video and share it more broadly. The upshot basically is that most organizational cultures they're very risk averse and they all operate mostly in this waterfall kind of environment, waterfall culture, where all of your requirements have to be gathered up front, everything has to be planned in severe detail, and then you go through a big design phase, a big execution phase, and then you learn at the very end of the project when you're finally live. And that's the way that most organizations work. The challenge of that with AI is that there are two things that are incredibly uncertain. One is your requirements, because a lot of organizations don't really know what kind of use cases on which kind of channels they should be starting off with. And also, there's uncertainty around the technology. A lot of organizations don't understand much about AI technologies, how to utilize them, and how to organize themselves to be able to benefit from them. And so, when you're in an environment where you do not understand your requirements and you do not understand your technology, you have no choice really but to use a more agile approach. And so, this 5-day sprint that I was sharing yesterday is essentially a way of defining an AI strategy in 5 days and validating an AI strategy in 5 days. So do check out the Swiss Cognitive Virtual event if you want to learn more about that. You can also go to vux.world/strategy sprint, because that's basically what I was talking about. So coming up for you this week, we are chatting to Darin Clarke, who is one of the team members over there at SoundHound. You might know SoundHound if you're familiar with the podcast. If you're familiar with VUX World, you've tuned in the past, you'll know SoundHound. They are one of the leading independent voice assistant platform providers, and they power assistants like Hey Mercedes, and they've partnered with Mastercard for a voice-enabled restaurant ordering capability, and they are well known in the conversational AI and speech field. And Darin will be joining us this Wednesday. Actually, I said Thursday; it's actually Wednesday tomorrow. A little bit later than now, to discuss wake word detection. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with speech technologies and NLP technologies, you probably are familiar though with Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, and voice assistant technologies in general. And the way that those voice assistants essentially listen to people, or at least are told that they should start listening to people, is with a wake word, which is "Hey Siri," or he's gonna go. No, it's not gonna go because it doesn't listen to me, and that's symptomatic. Or Alexa, or "Hey Google," whatever those phrases are that wake up your assistant. That is known as a wake word. Now, most organizations and most people, actually, if you work in marketing, in customer experience, in innovation, you probably take for granted that when you say something, your device wakes up and it starts listening to what you're saying. But the reality is that to build that capability, there's a hell of a lot going on under the hood. So we're going to be talking to Darin tomorrow about just exactly what wake word detection is, how it works, and crucially, how your business or brand can create its own wake words and deploy your voice assistant and have your voice assistant be accessible via wake word detection. And this is a trend that we're going to see definitely more so in future. We're starting to see it a little bit now. There's a lot of banking apps that actually don't use wake word detection yet. They're still, you activate the voice assistant by clicking the microphone button. Excuse me. But things like, in-car voice assistants like Hey Mercedes and the BMW Assistant, all of those have wake word detection. If you open the Amazon Alexa app, you'll notice that the Amazon Alexa app has wake word detection enabled. So when you open the Alexa app, you just say Alexa to your phone and it will activate the assistant. So what we're going to see over time, 100%, is that a way of navigating apps is going to be by invoking a voice assistant. And not just navigating apps, but getting stuff done on mobile is going to be via a voice assistant, and via likely a branded independent voice assistant from your brand. And the way that you get into that experience will be through a wake word. So even if you're not at the point yet where you're building your own voice capabilities inside your app or your own digital estate, you will be in future. And learning now about it and how it works and how you can utilize it will stand you in good stead for when you eventually get to that point, which you inevitably will. At least that is my belief. So here's another horrible LinkedIn URL for you to visit. For those of you listening on the podcast, linkedin.com/events/ 685 869 7539 244 2336. LinkedIn needs to absolutely sort its URLs out, I can tell you. Otherwise, you can just go to vux.world/events, and all the events are listed on there, or go to my profile on LinkedIn and you'll find them all there as well. Do tune in. It's going to be an absolutely epic one. Last week we spoke to Chandra Khatri, who is the head of AI at Got It AI, and what we've been doing on VUX World recently, over the probably I would say the last maybe 2 to 3 months, we've had a lot of startups on, and we've had a lot of companies and a lot of individuals talking about some very incredibly exciting stuff. So we had Jason Mars on the podcast recently, who is a professor at Michigan University. He's the co-founder of Clink and one of the kind of like probably most experienced, definitely one of the most enthusiastic and charismatic individuals in this space. And we had him on talking about Zero Shot Bot. And we had Nikolai. I'm going to find his name so I make sure I don't butcher it. It's from Vlooper AI. Nikolai Rozanov, sorry about that, Nikolai. Nikolai Rozanov from Vlooper talking about Vlooper's technology. We then also had Israel Krush from Hyro discussing their technology. And then finally, with Chandra Khatri of Got It AI discussing their technology. And the reason why I'm going through all of those podcasts that we've done and discussions that we've had over the last couple of weeks is that they all share one thing in common, is that these companies do not have what is more traditionally known or classically known as classical NLU systems, natural language understanding systems. If anyone out there has ever designed or built a voice assistant or a chatbot or any conversational application, you will be familiar with NLU systems, and you will be familiar with intent-based NLU systems. Dialogflow, Microsoft Lewis, Amazon Lex, the vast majority of conversational AI platform providers, Cognigy's, Boosts, you name it, the vast majority of them use intent-based NLU systems. And these conversations we've been having over the last couple of weeks have really shone a light on just how frail these NLU systems can be, especially when you start scaling. Jason Balmer's saying that rolls off the tongue. I think you're referring to the URLs that we've got on LinkedIn. It's absolutely amazing. It really does roll off the tongue. So the discussions that we've been having have been around the limitations of NLU technologies and the difficulty in scaling NLU technologies, and how transformer-based NLU models perform a lot better. We don't need to get into the technical details of transformer models, even though Chandra did get into that in great detail on the podcast. And the reason for that is because I'm not a techie and I wanted to understand it. And so if I left that podcast understanding it, which I kind of think I do, then I think you will leave the podcast understanding it as well. And so please do check that out if you are interested in what I describe as the future of natural language understanding. Most natural language understanding systems, most chatbots, most voice bots, most conversational assistants that have anything to do with content will be using this technology in the next 2 years. I can promise you that. So to get a jump on it, to learn more about it right now, check out vux.world/podcast and check out the one with Chandra Khatri. It was absolutely immense. We also spoke to Gal Klein, who is the CEO of AudioBurst last week as well. AudioBurst has a very unique philosophy and a very unique technology. Essentially, what it does is it takes content like this, audio like this, spoken word audio, and it essentially tries to, or it does, understand the component parts of the conversation. It breaks up the topics that are discussed within a spoken piece of audio and makes those individual snippets searchable and findable. And what we were talking to Gal about was essentially how there is so much audio that is produced in the world today. Every single radio station broadcasting 24 hours a day, some of them, every single podcast that gets created. We're creating 2 to 3 podcasts a week at the moment. And it doesn't sound like that much, but for an individual to sit there and talk for 3 hours per week, that's 3 hours worth of content. And unless you listen to this podcast from beginning to end, all of the rich content, the inevitably rich content that we do get into on the podcast, ends up getting lost and ends up being difficult to find. And so what AudioBurst do is they take things like podcasts, like news bulletins and things like that. They chop that audio up using the AI behind the scenes to automatically understand the subtopics within each piece of audio, and they then make that audio discoverable via a natural language interface on the front end. So we haven't set it up yet, but I'm definitely going to look at it for the VUX World website, which is that if you go to, for example, the VUX World website and you were able to activate the search box and just say what is conversation design, design, what it will do is it will interrogate all of the podcasts that we have, and it will find the snippets of the podcasts that discuss conversation design and return those. And it's such a really unique way of, one, repurposing audio, and two, making more use of your audio and getting it discovered. And so shout out to the Audio Burst team, and do check out vox.world/podcast, the interview we did with Gal Klein, who is the CEO of Audio Burst, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. And it really, for news organizations, for media companies, especially if you do anything to do with news or anything like that, this technology is an absolute game changer. And what I was saying to Gal is that there's a serious untapped market, because you know how YouTube now, it will put little kind of like chapterized markers in there, and you can state and create chapters in YouTube videos. Most of that is a manual task. YouTube will try and generate some of that on its own, but it's incredibly hit and miss. So something like Audio Burst will be absolutely immense for that. So do check out that podcast. It is absolutely amazing. Another piece of hot news, and this was kind of like right after last week's broadcast where we did this rundown, this news was published, which was that Microsoft announced that it is releasing, or has released, I can't remember the exact state, I think it's generally available actually, a contact center capability within the Dynamics 365 CRM. Excuse me. This has been rumored to be on the cards for quite some time. It seems to be the only thing that Microsoft don't do. Jason Barmer, who was commenting earlier on, I can see what your tagline is, let's talk about CPaaS. So we know that Microsoft have CPaaS-like capabilities, and we know that they have incredible power and reliability when it comes to their AI provision, especially on the speech and NLU side. They've got a good, decent presence, not an amazing presence, but a decent enough presence in the CRM space with Dynamics 365. They've got a dramatically huge presence, and it's increased tremendously over the last year, given COVID situations, everyone working from home. Presence in the enterprise with Teams. Almost every large-scale enterprise at the moment runs on Teams. And so the only thing really that Microsoft was missing was a contact center capability. And there've been rumors about that being plumbed into Teams potentially. And it turns out that now it is actually going to be part of of Dynamics 365. Talking to Michael Nelson about this recently, shout out to Mike if you are watching. And we were discussing, why did Microsoft put it within Dynamics 365. Salesforce is inevitably the market leader in CRM technology, and Salesforce does have a partnership with Amazon Connect, and so Salesforce is bringing about the similar kind of capabilities within the Salesforce product. But for Microsoft to embed that contact center within Dynamics 365, it almost seems as though they're kind of limiting their market a little bit, because their market share in the CRM space isn't exactly huge. However, their enterprise footprint is massive, and so would it have been a more sensible option to put it in with Teams rather than Dynamics 365? Do Microsoft have a big enough customer base that already are utilizing Dynamics 365 to make this thing a worthwhile investment to try and upsell existing customers? Will people actually just start using and switching their CRM to Dynamics 365 purely because of the benefits of the contact center that Microsoft is providing? All of this is yet to be discovered. But what I thought was really, really interesting, and the reason why we're talking about it on this, we obviously do cover CX technology and the likes of CPaaS and stuff like that. But our lens is always an automation lens and an AI-powered customer experience lens, because that is ultimately what all of these technologies are going to turn into over time. CPaaS, contact centers, these are going to be the front end of businesses. Basically, is going to be an AI, conversational AI, and it's a CPaaS and the contact center that's going to power it all. And so what was interesting with Microsoft when they launched the contact center is that they pretty much said not really much about the contact center itself. It seems as though it's going to just provide what you would expect from a contact center. Although when we chatted again, shout out to Mike, he was saying that Michael Nelson was talking about how there is very little by way of workflow management and a whole bunch of things around those lines that were published, and that's because basically Microsoft have just used the AI lens with this. Essentially, it's contact center baseline, fundamental contact center capabilities, but the secret sauce or the selling point really is the fact that there's AI infused throughout the entire thing, and it's all speech based. So, for example, one of the things it has is real time transcriptions, which means that as you're on a call with a customer, the conversation will be transcribed in real time so that the agent can see it there and then. It means there's no more asking customers to repeat themselves, it's no more tracking back through the conversation, and it helps people keep on track and make sure that they are on the same page. And it also helps feed into analysis and analytics further down the line. Live sentiment analysis. So you can, I mean, I suppose there is an argument that humans should be able to detect sentiment and then use their skills to be able to turn a bad conversation into a positive conversation. But every single individual is so fundamentally different that not everybody is as good as others at picking up those kind of signals. And so having sentiment analysis within your call center built in native as the default part of the contact center provision means that absolutely every single person answering calls has got access to the exact same information, and the reporting is far richer. The coaching and training can be far more effective, and you are able to understand the emotional states of users and respond to that in real time, essentially, in a consistent way. It's got proactive AI driven recommendations. Now, this is essentially agent assist technology. So imagine that you're a call handler and you're on the phone to a customer. You have a little widget. We spoke to Balto, Mark Bernstein from Balto. This is exactly what they do, and they specialize in this stuff, which is that the technology listens to the call, listens to the customer, listens to the agent, and then over the course of that call, using natural language understanding, it recognizes what the user is trying to accomplish, and then it will suggest things that the agent can do, questions to ask, information to share, and guides the user, guides the agent basically as far as managing that conversation. So that's built into this contact center platform from Microsoft. Real-time translation. Now, this could be absolutely epic. It's a bit light on detail to see what it actually does entail. But if you can imagine a world where somebody in, I don't know, Brazil can call a contact center that is hosted in the US, and the person in Brazil speaks Portuguese and the person in the US speaks English, obviously, and have that conversation transcribed from Portuguese into English in real time on the phone so that the English speaking call handler, can understand what was said and then respond and have that translation made again in real time using a synthetic voice to relay that conversation back to the Brazilian speaker, Portuguese speaker on the other end. I don't know if it goes as far as that. I think that this is pretty much just incoming signal, Portuguese in, transcribe, translate, and print the translated equivalent on screen into whatever language it's translated into. I don't think it goes the other way yet from the agent back to the customer, but halfway is better than nothing. It's got AI-based routing, which can automatically route calls to the right agents based on their kind of capabilities and things like that. AI analytics, which will tell you things like, what are most people calling about and where do most people drop out and all that kind of stuff. Allows you to identify pain points. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. There was about 10 different features that it announced, and most of them were 7 out of 10 were AI based, conversational AI based. Obviously, it has an integration with Microsoft Power Agents, which means that you can actually build automated conversations within the phone line itself for self-service and stuff like that. And so it'll be really, really interesting to see how this pans out and where it goes, because it was long rumored. It took a while to get there, but yeah, there you go. Microsoft have entered the contact center space. Moving on, that was a mouthful. There was a hell of a lot of information in that digest. Symbol AI has raised $17 million. Congratulations. That's a Series A funding round that follows their seed funding round of $4 million, which was around about 2019, I think, when it launched. In fact, actually, it might have only been last year. I think it's only been around for a year or so. And essentially, what Symbol AI does is conversational insights and analytics. Essentially, it helps you understand and analyze in real time what the nature of speech is. And we're going to have, hold on a minute, I've got a comment through here from, sorry, it just says LinkedIn user, and I can't see who that is, but it says, I read the translation on Dynamics Voice AI from English to Hindi. I had a good laugh. It will take some time to get there. I can imagine that. I can imagine. So I know that Google's real-time translate, it's not actually that bad. I've used that in France, and I've also used it in Holland, and it wasn't too bad. But there's obviously a lag in me speaking into the phone, waiting for it to be translated, and then showing it. I actually, last time I was in Italy before the pandemic, we stayed in a hotel, and it was just like a series of kind of like buildings. So you have one building, the next building's somebody else, but it is part of a hotel complex. And what they did is at certain times, probably about 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, the gate would lock, private kind of like land, and the gate would lock, and you couldn't get out until 7 o'clock the next morning. Now, and sorry, no, you could get out, but you couldn't get back in again. That's it, until 7 o'clock in the morning. So what happened is, me and my wife, we'd packed up. We had an early flight. We left the hotel, left the gate, and the gate shut behind us. And then we realized, oh, sorry, no, no, that's a lie. You couldn't get out. That's what it is. I can't remember exactly what the story was now, but there's something to do with the gate. Basically, I think we left. Oh, that was it. I think we left our key inside the hotel, locked the hotel door, and couldn't get out the gate. Something daft like that. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, I had to knock up one of the neighboring properties. This is at 6 o'clock in the morning. I had to get them out of bed to come and help us get through the gate. And it was an Italian couple who had a little dog called Ducasa, which is definitely what I'm going to name my dog if I ever have a female dog. And I used Google Translate at 6 o'clock in the morning to communicate the fact that our key had been left in the hotel. We can't get out the gate, so he couldn't come and help me. And that kind of worked. It took a bit of effort, but it kind of worked. I think the biggest barrier there was that I was translating English into French, and the guy was Italian. But anyway, yes, I can imagine that real-time translate will take a bit of a while to get there. I think the thing with this stuff is that it just needs to be good enough for somebody to understand, broadly speaking, what was said. You don't need to understand every single detail often. As long as you can get the gist of what's said, you can still hold a conversation. So, but anyway, I think that you're right. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see see how it goes. Cool. Cheers for that comment. Moving on, as I was saying, Simple AI. We have Subi Rathor on the podcast in about 2 weeks' time. We're going to be discussing Simple AI. We're going to be discussing what it does. We're going to be discussing the funding round and a whole bunch of good stuff around there. So again, vux.world/events if you want to sign up to that one. In-World AI has also today or yesterday just raised $7 million. I keep mentioning funding and stuff like that because I think it's a really good indication of confidence in the market, confidence in this kind of technology, and confidence in the value that it is and can and will have in the world. And in-world AI, I agree, better to be able to communicate a little bit rather than waiting. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I agree. In-World AI is founded by the ex-founders of Dialogflow. And so essentially, I'll go through exactly what it does in a moment. Let me just kind of dig up the details. It's gone now. It's gone. Anyway, founded by the ex-founders of Dialogflow. I forget the guy's name. Apologies for overlooking that. And essentially, what it does is we've been hearing a lot of stuff about the metaverse recently, haven't we? And Facebook kind of like pivoting its whole sort of operation towards trying to create this metaverse and the environment for developers and brands and third parties to build tools and build characters and build kind of like products and a whole bunch of stuff that's going to live inside this metaverse. And then you saw Nike, that Nike has got a patent filed for digital sneakers that they're going to be selling in the metaverse. In-World AI. What is so interesting about this is that this capability is intended for anyone, to be able to build a character, an avatar, likely 3D because it's going to exist in the metaverse, as it's called. But using natural language technologies, it will be essentially a bot, right? A virtual character walking around, doing stuff, going places, having conversations, but it will be an automated conversation. And so In-World, it provides a technology platform for you to build the avatars and for you to build the dialogue systems that sit around the avatar, essentially equipping that virtual person to be able to have conversations. And I think $7 million at this stage, I suppose, is pretty decent. I think it's going to take a lot more to build this technology out, because As soon as you start adding anything on top of language, like even a gaze, or facial expressions or hand movements and body language, it starts to get incredibly complex. So they're definitely working on very complex problems there. Um, but what's interesting is the potential for this. If things go the way that Mark Zuckerberg would have them go, and if things go the way that the articles hyping up the metaverse would have you believe, bearing in mind that this is all 100% part of the hype cycle, and so it will be overhyped to death before we eventually realize that what's there is actually not as good as we thought it would be, and start actually building some proper stuff for it. But over the long term, if this does go the way that certain people would have you believe it is, um, then in-world AI will have the capabilities to for brands to be able to build their own virtual selves. So one of the things that you do when you create any conversational application is that you create your personality for your brand to make sure that you provide a consistent customer experience across all of your many different users who all will interpret the brand and the conversation and the person behind the conversation slightly differently unless you try and design to have some consistency with that. It's like taking that a step further, designing the actual body, designing the clothes. Like what that's a bit self-explanatory or rhetorical question in terms of what a Nike persona would look like, because they'll be head to toe Nike wearing a pair of Air Max, etc. But for certain brands, they will have some very interesting opportunities here. What would it be like to have your brand representative present 24 hours a day in a virtual environment, having virtual conversations with other kind of virtual humans, but real humans on the other end? What does that say for your kind of like customer experience? What does that say for your brand engagement? What does it say for sales? Can you sell stuff in there? Will this be a virtual sales rep that's going around upselling people and all this kind of stuff? And then also things like, celebrities and all this kind of stuff. It just opens up a whole mad world of possibilities, which is really, really interesting. So congratulations to In-World AI. Ronald McDonald, do you know that is exactly? I've got an Evernote article fired up, which I'm ready to publish probably at the back end of the week, that delves into this a little bit more. And Ronald McDonald is the exact character that I was thinking of, because it's McDonald's opportunity to bring Ronald McDonald to life in in this metaverse. Miguel Costa says, "Will it replace websites?" Will it replace? It's a good question. I think that all of this is a lot further away than we would have it us believe. Basically, I think that we're probably a long way away from this. Not a long way away from the technology and the environments existing for that reality to be there. It's all about customer adoption and customer engagement. Like, one of the things that people always said about smart speakers is that smart speakers will be the next app store. The adoption of smart speakers, the fact that you can build apps on there, the fact that you can process transactions on there. The smart speaker was kind of forecast in 2017, 2018 to be the next app store. It was forecast that there'll be a killer app and there'll be multi-millionaires, multi-billionaire companies created off the back of the voice operating system. Now, I don't dispute that that could still happen, but it hasn't happened yet. In fact, the vast majority of people that build on these platforms have really struggled to monetize. There's a handful of people who have managed to monetize, Invoked Apps being one of them, Matchbox being another one, and Tom Hewittson's company. I forget the name off the top of my head. But those are the only three companies that have Voice Arcade. Those are the only companies that have managed to actually monetize this stuff. And the jury's still out about whether that's long-term monetization or whether it's just riding the wave right now. And so the answer, I think, Miguel, is that it entirely depends how fast people can adopt it. If you need a VR headset, and I know that Mark Zuckerberg was saying that you'll be able to access it on mobile and be able to access it on desktop and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, if it's supposed to be an immersive third world, then inevitably a VR headset of some description makes kind of sense. And the other challenge with that, I think, is that it is truly an immersive thing, whereas a smart speaker and a voice interface is a passive interface. It's something that you can access and utilize while you're doing something else. Mobile phones tend to be quite immersive, but with voice interfaces on them, they're becoming a bit more passive. But generally, when you're on your mobile, you have to give it your attention. Same thing with the desktop, and I think the same thing will be the case with the metaverse. It's not like you're going to have 19 tabs open, because I think that it's going to require a lot more cognitive effort. So whether it will replace websites, I think, is all about how fast will people adopt it and how much time will people spend in there. I think that, it's nice in theory to think about, oh, wouldn't it be nice if, we can have virtual meetings and our company can exist virtually and people can work from anywhere, but we can still be together and we can still collaborate and all that kind of stuff. The same kind of stuff was said about Amazon Alexa. Wouldn't it be nice if I could just walk into work and just ask Alexa to pull up the slide deck that I'm presenting in 5 minutes? And that's technically possible, but it just hasn't happened because the consumer confidence, demand, and traction hasn't been there. So it's a massive, massive question. I think there's more chance of conversational interfaces replacing websites before the metaverse replaces websites, because at least you can utilize your website content. You can utilize everything you know about customers in their existing channels that they've been using for decades, and you can use that to create an automated AI that is able to answer questions, serve people, process transactions, allow people to get stuff done. That's far more likely in the medium term, I think, than it is the metaverse turns into, replaces websites. But what the hell do I know? Ultimately. Anyway, congratulations to InWorld AI. I'm definitely interested in seeing where that goes. This is probably another interesting thing that is probably something that InWorld AI could utilize, to be totally honest, because NVIDIA have announced some capability called audio to face. Miguel, let me know if you've heard about this, and also the other boy or girl who was commenting a minute ago. For some reason, this program doesn't tell me your name, so apologies for that. Let me know if you've heard about this, because it's really interesting. NVIDIA's audio to face will streamline character animation. So basically, what does it do? It allows you to upload a piece of speech, right? Audio containing speech. Someone's keeping trying to ring me. Audio containing speech, and what it will do is it will, as you create a avatar, a character, basically in whatever program you use. This is mainly for like game designers and stuff like that, but it has wider applications. But let's use the use case of a game. Let's say you're designing a game like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is the only game I can think of, because the last time I was playing games like this was when I was about 15 and Grand Theft Auto was the game of choice. But imagine you're designing a game. One of the hardest parts about designing any kind of animated characters, whether it's a cartoon, whether it's an animated video, whether it's a game character, is syncing up the voice and the speech to the audio. Because when you're designing a character, a digital character, you basically have to sync those mouth movements in frame by frame, basically. Now I know that Adobe, it's not XD, I think it's Illustrator. In fact, actually, it might be called Character Animator. Had some capabilities like this where you could assign a mouth to a specific phoneme, and then you could talk, and it would begin generating the mouth movements. But what NVIDIA's technology does is it will take your entire character, and the videos that they've got on the NVIDIA website is like a rhinoceros or a character, another person, and you can feed it the audio sample, and it will create the mouth movements and facial expressions in real time generated for that character, which means that you can, for example, let's say that you're creating an animated video. Those typical animated sales videos. I get messages on LinkedIn all the time. You should create an animated sales video from a company who creates animated sales videos. It will make their life a hell of a lot easier, because you can just record your audio, feed it to your character, and have your character speak that audio properly. And so something like InWorld, who's trying to create virtual avatars that have conversational capabilities, could be able to utilize something like this to help their developers and their process. So it's interesting, and it is building on top of, likely it's some NLP, some speech recognition, a whole bunch of kind of technologies, and then obviously translating that into mouth movements on the other end. But I think that this has broader application beyond game design. I think that we'll see a lot of interesting stuff come from this. Second to last thing, I've been going for 38 minutes. I can't believe it's been going that long. This is how mental this industry is. All this stuff is stuff that have happened from last Wednesday, and it's not even stuff that, it's not even the extent of it all. This is just the stuff that we've decided to talk about. Coinbase acquires Agara. So Coinbase, as you know, it's one of the leading crypto investment platforms, and it's acquired Agara. Agara is a conversational AI company, I believe, that started out in India, is now based in the US, or it's now based in Coinbase. And they've essentially acquired the platform. It's an unspecified amount, or did I see the sum of 40 million mentioned? I can't remember now. But they were taking the technology, and using it in-house for their customer support initiatives. And the reason why I think this is interesting, it's very similar to the funding that we're seeing being poured into this industry, but this one obviously is an acquisition. It follows the acquisition of Botmock by Walmart, which is another example of a private organization acquiring a conversational AI startup. And this is a trend that we're going to see. We're going to see this trend happen both ways. So one is organizations, private organizations or public organizations acquiring capabilities from the marketplace, taking startups off the market and absorbing them in-house to enhance their own capabilities and their services. You would expect this from Microsoft. We didn't expect them to acquire Nuance, but you would expect that kind of activity. Google back in the day acquired API.ai, which is the in-world founders created that. That turned into Dialogflow. And Apple, acquired PullString and acquires all kinds of voices and a whole bunch of other capabilities. You expect that from the big companies. You expect them to go down into the market, find innovative technologies, bring it in-house, because they're trying to enhance their AI provision themselves. They're trying to make their services that they provide to others better. What's interesting about this is that these companies are not trying to do that. They're trying to take technology and essentially avoid themselves having to build it themselves, or avoid themselves from having to use a Google or an Amazon or a Microsoft for all their capabilities. And so Walmart acquired Botmock, likely will take the technology from within that, work it into its workflow. Coinbase acquiring Agara, more than likely they'll probably just keep Agara as it is. It works in a voice environment, it works in a chat environment, probably just use that and build out their customer service and customer support offering within that. At the same time, though, I mentioned it will go both ways. That's going one way. That's companies coming out to the marketplace, acquiring startups and bringing them in-house. At the same time, you'll see the opposite happening. Companies who've developed technology in-house sharing that more broadly with the market. It's happening at Deutsche Telekom, and we're going to have Deutsche Telekom on the podcast in January to talk about the capabilities that they've been building and how they're making that available to the wider public. They've essentially built a conversational AI platform that they've been using to build out their capabilities, but they're going to be releasing that and making it more broadly available, which is interesting. We had Justin Randall on the podcast many months ago from Comwave. He was a chief innovation officer at Comwave, and he built a bot called Penny on Dialogflow, but he had a whole bunch of dialogue management capabilities underneath it that he'd built himself. Their intention at Comwave was to license that capability out to other telecom providers. And so we're seeing that internally capabilities are being created that are then going to be marketed and broadcast or shared with third parties, and at the same time those that can't develop their own are going out into the marketplace and acquiring. So it's a really interesting time to observe this kind of stuff happening. I wrote an article week before last which was all about the ultimate convergence of conversational AI, and this is kind of aligned with some of it. So if you're interested in a little bit more about that, I would definitely recommend you go to vux.world/articles. Very final one. This is a little bit kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit theoretical, hypothetical. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but basically, it's not necessarily fact from the horse's mouth. It is rumored based on a code that was observed to have been leaked on Reddit, code that had been leaked from Sonos, which had indication that there will be some degree of voice-enabled wake word detection on Sonos smart speakers. Again, not really a surprise. This has been forecast for a long time. Sonos acquired Snips, which was the Paris-based speech company. Basically, the value prop for Snips was that it's on-device processing. And in an environment like Sonos, where you have a whole bunch of, I think the language model for Sonos has pretty much been figured out, because it's play music, stop music, play the last song, add this to my favorites, rewind, all of that kind of like basic music playing stuff. So Sonos can quite feasibly, using the Snips technology, have its speakers run on device. Yes, there'll be things that change, like new song titles and new artist names and stuff like that, and updates to the model, which they can make over time. It'll still be connected to the internet, but most of it will be running on devices. So don't be surprised if Sonos do release their voice assistant. Don't be surprised if one of the things that they are pushing really heavily is privacy and security, on-device processing. We don't know what you're asking for. We just play the song. And so, very interesting though to see that the code has been leaked, or at least evidence of this being leaked, because Sonos has been in a little bit of a spat recently with Google over who will have access to the wake word on Sonos speakers. So Google essentially want to have access to the wake word, and if it's something that Google can't handle, it will pass it off to Sonos. Or if it's an intent that's specific to Sonos, it will pass it off to Sonos. Sonos want to work the other way around, which is that Sonos want its assistant to be the go-to assistant that handles the wake word and the first intent, the first request. And then if it's a weather request or something, it'll hand it off to Google. Google doesn't want to play second fiddle, which is obviously in line with Google's strategy, because Google wants to be the front door to the internet and the entry point to the internet, as it always has been traditionally when most of the internet was beginning in the browser and on Google. But now access to the internet and the interface to the internet is exploding. Every device possible is now connected to the internet, and Google is in a big battle to maintain its position as the default entry point to the internet, because that's how it's built its entire business so far. And inevitably, if you can manage to get yourself into that position, there'll be incredible upside to that in future as well, as we all build our habits and behaviors and trust in voice interfaces. But it would seem, if this leak is actually correct, which it might not be, but if it is, it may well be that Sonos are pushing forward with their own assistant running on their own devices, leapfrogging Google. And if that's the case, you heard it here first. It will be a privacy-first voice assistant that processes most of its requests on the device. That is all for this episode of What's New in Conversational AI. If you haven't yet subscribed to my LinkedIn newsletter, please do so. It's called Conversational AI and NLP. As I said, there's about 1,100 people subscribed so far just from today. I published the first one today. The next one will be next Tuesday. So please do that. If you want all of this stuff in your inbox, you want our weekly newsletter, which we do outside of LinkedIn, it's vux.world/subscribe. This Thursday, as I mentioned, we're talking to Darin, Clarke of SoundHound, all about wake word detection. Wednesday. It's Wednesday, not Thursday. It's tomorrow. So please do check that out. This has been fun. I think that, next week, who knows if it'll be a quiet week or a booming week. Guillaume, thank you very much, mate. I appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see what happens next week. I'm hoping it's going to be busy. I'm hoping it's going to be another exciting one, but we shall soon see. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you same time next week, or Wednesday, if you join us for wake word detection with Darin Clarke. See you soon.